Welcome to Storymix Craft and Conversation. I'm Jasmine Richards, author, editor, and founder of Storymix, the multi-award-winning inclusive fiction studio. This is the podcast where I talk with the writers and illustrators behind Storymix titles about the craft of storytelling, the realities of publishing, and how creative careers actually get built. Hello listeners, and welcome to Season 2. It's been a while since we made the first season of Craft and Conversation, and publishing has changed a little bit in that time. There is less marketing support for books generally, and less marketing support specifically for books by creators from minoritized backgrounds. Far too often, really brilliant work is being lost, not because there is no audience for it, but because that audience never gets the chance to discover it. We're going to do something about that, and why not? It's our 7-year anniversary, and so we're going to celebrate 7 books coming out in 2026. In this episode, we're talking to A.M. Ellis, author of I Feel Your Pain, published by Penguin Random House in the UK on June 25th, 2026. We get into a rich discussion who gets to write which stories, and how A.M. Ellis is trying to write her way out of the boxes publishing puts people in. We also talk about dystomance and blending 2 genres, and why it's important that both genres are thoroughly explored and balanced. We find out about the perils of time travel for Black people, why she loves the 90s, and why it is so hard to break a heart. So, here's my conversation with A.M. Ellis. Hello and welcome to Storymix Craft and Conversation, the podcast where we talk to the writers and illustrators behind Storymix books about the craft, challenges, and opportunities that shape their work. Today's guest is Angelica Ellis, who writes as A.M. Ellis on the brand new YA dystopian romance, I Feel Your Pain. At the center of the novel is a big idea. What if pain could be taken from one person and transferred into somebody else? But I Feel Your Pain is also about who gets heard, who gets relief, who profits from suffering, and who is allowed to imagine a different kind of future. And a bigger question still when it comes to the publishing industry, who gets to imagine full stop? Who gets the time, access, the industry to support to become a writer at all? So I think we're going to get into all of that today. Angelica, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I like that intro. That was a great breakdown. You use that. Great breakdown of the story. I was sad.
Thank you. I try. Now, before we get into it, and I'm so excited to get into it because there's so much to get into, we're going to do a sort of Storymix rapid fire round. So you don't have to overthink these questions at all.
Sweet.
There's around 10, but depending on where we go, we might not do all of them. We'll see how much we talk. But question number 1 is, tell us a fun fact about yourselves.
I think it's always hard to think of fun facts because, like, what is fun? Let me think real quick. I'm going to go with right now. I am attempting to write my first comic. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this. But yeah, I'm attempting to kind of take my novel writing skills and translate that to comic books and see what happens.
Oh, amazing. So I know there's different methods, aren't there? So there's a sort of like the Stan Lee method, and there's
Right. Yes.
right. So and you can sort of do the storyboard, you can do it as a script. I'm going to be so real with you. As a writer, I sort of peeped over the wall at writing a graphic novel because I've done some screenwriting for TV, and then I backed away real quick. Why? It looked very difficult indeed. So
it's scary because there's no like save the cat. Like there's no set format to follow. I did peep the Marvel method where it's just kind of, that's scary to me. That method is scary. But I've been leaning towards trying to figure out scripts. So like writing out what the panels will be, the dialogue bubbles, all of that.
Oh, exciting. And is it genre? You don't have to tell us the idea. I know sometimes talking about
Mm.
an idea when it's in its very early stage, you sort of then, the poor baby idea is getting smothered. So
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
tell
yeah.
is it sort of genre? Is it a different
It's
direction?
like, I would say paranormal romance. That's where we're going. Yep. Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
Tasty,
Mhm.
tasty, tasty. Okay. Okay. So as a reader, what kind of reader were you at 16, or what were you reading at 16?
So 16, so those would be the years where I had a lot of like assigned reading in school, and that was taking up a lot of my time. So it was that and comics, which is like, it's kind of how I found my way to trying to write a comic. But yeah, it was mainly whatever was assigned. So Zora Neale Hurston, I remember I read Their Eyes Are Watching God at 16, got obsessed with it. That became my favorite read. So many of that. And then if I wasn't reading that, then it was like X-Men, Garfield. It was like anything the library had in the comic section, I was reading that.
Ah, so very much things that were part of the canon in the States, right?
Mm-hmm.
So of the school. It's interesting because I feel like they talk about how with teenagers their reading goes off the cliff, but I don't think anyone is really thinking about how much of their time, their reading time, is taken
Mm-hmm.
up by assigned reading, what you have to do for school. And then maybe it's also fair enough they'd want to read other things as well. It's not just that teens don't want to read. It's just
Yeah, it's like the time, there's not time to do school now. Like my son doesn't have as much homework as I think he should. When I remember for me, high school, my evenings were pretty much packed with schoolwork. There wasn't a lot of side stuff. A little bit, but not too much.
I feel like we've got sort of some similar age kids going on there because my son's got far too much free time. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
okay, so what was the first speculative or dystopian story that you became obsessed with?
Let's see here. I'm not sure which one came first. I was really into Divergent, so Veronica Roth. I was really into reading a lot of like paranormal stuff. So Charlene Harris, Sookie Stackhouse, those
Oh
books.
yeah, I didn't read them, but I watched it. I really watched
Mm-hmm.
all of it. I loved it. Yeah.
Yes, yes, that. And then there was a series that will know it, but it's called Daughters of the Moon. And if you ask me to explain what it's about, I can't tell you what it's about. I just remember that I was really into Daughters of the Moon and mad that my library only had like random numbers in the series, that they had like 1, 2, 5, and 7. And it was like the most frustrating thing ever. And then I would go like to the store, couldn't find it in the store. But my husband actually bought them for me. I think this past Mother's Day, like recently, he bought me all the issues, so I get to go revisit that soon. But yeah, those are my obsessions.
That's actually so romantic because that's
Yeah.
someone who really knows you and is listening. I have to say
Mm-hmm.
that is extremely romantic. Okay.
Yeah.
Points to him. He gets
Points to
points.
him.
He gets points.
Definitely.
Okay, so when you're writing a character, do you see them first or hear them first?
Hear them first, I would say, because there are times when I don't know what a character looks like. Like I had finished the book, finished drafting the whole thing, and have not figured out the color of their hair, what the color of their eyes are. So I don't necessarily see them first, but I get their voice down, personality, and then I try to figure out if the story that I put them in is their story, like make sure it's their story and I'm not forcing plot onto the character, if that makes sense. Sometimes you'll have a story idea and it's like, oh, I want to do a hero's journey, right? And then you put maybe a reluctant hero as your protagonist. But like, are the choices that you're making throughout the story the choices that person would actually make? So that's kind of what I'm focusing on first.
Okay, so I'm actually now going off piece, but I have to ask this question because obviously the way Storymix works with talented writers like yourself, there's a sort of collaborative process around the
Mm-hmm.
storyline, but there is a sort of storyline to follow. How
right?
did you find that process? And you can be completely honest. It's
It
okay.
was very interesting to me. It was very interesting, especially with Nova, because I felt like her decision making, it made sense to me the, for the dystopian plot. When it came to the romance, I'm like, I think she would have like broken up with Cass at this point, kind of thing. And so then it became, how can I make Cass into someone that Nova is going to fall for? So it was figuring out their personalities that way to make sure that their decision making made sense to who they were. But it was an interesting process.
Well, I would say for the audience at home, you are very charming and straightforward in how you put stuff, but you definitely did push back on stuff,
I did.
which
I did.
is great because it's all
Mhm.
about, and I say it to my kids as well. It's about the way you put stuff. We want this to be a dialogue. Storymix isn't just like a write by numbers. We sort of ask
Right.
writers to come onto a project to breathe a soul into the project. So we're asking them to bring their full selves. We've got to then also be open. And Steph, who is your editor, your Storymix editor, because you'll have your sort of publisher editor and your Storymix editor. I think the Steph has so enjoyed working with you because even when you're pushing back and being stubborn, you are so charming. You're like, okay. And also your points are brilliant. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Mhm. That's good to hear. That's good to hear, though. Yeah. I try to, when I do push back, I try to think it through to make sure it's something like a hill that I actually want to stand on. I come there with the points that I want to make. And I just wanted to make sure that Cass was someone that readers were going to fall for too. I didn't want people to be like, oh, Nova should have left him long ago. I didn't want that to happen at all. So
It helps that he doesn't have his shirt on quite early on, though.
yeah. I think that helps too. Looks a lot.
I was reading the book because I sort of read it as a manuscript, but I hadn't read it like a couple of versions until and I had the physical book and I was reading it, and like he's really hot. Like you did it, so I was
I
all
tried.
in. I was all in. Let me tell you, which is since I'm a grown woman, it's maybe not okay, but there we go. Okay, would you rather live in the past, the present, or the future?
I think this is I'm gonna be like, just blunt here. I think it's a very interesting question to always ask Black people. Because
Listen,
like,
listen.
because I don't want to go
Yeah.
back. Yeah, I don't want to go back. That's not happening at all.
Oh, it depends how
Um,
far. It depends how far back, right?
I enjoyed the 90s. We can go there. That's about it. That's about it. We're not going too much past that. I think to be an adult in the 90s would have been interesting,
Mm.
but I have a strong interest for the future. I'm really into Star Trek, and I'd love to see the world get to that point of Star Trek. Everyone is just living together in like somewhat harmony, and then we have all that tech. So living in the future would be my perfect.
Future. What if you had a
Mhm.
character? Was it Q who'd just turn up and mess with everyone like a real? Was he called Q?
Oh yes, it was cute.
Yeah. I like him real because I love trickster characters actually. And
Mhm.
he was the one. I love Star Trek. I should go back and watch some of those with my kids actually. Yeah, the future. Let's hoping it's a hopeful future, but I get it. There's
Yeah,
a huge chunk of history where I want to be. No, you're right. What is your favorite romance trope?
it's gonna be like two combined together. So like second chance romance, but when they were like childhood friends to lovers at the same time. Those two together, really good.
So sort of love and basketball territory.
Yes.
Yeah.
Though I think some people would call that a horror story. But yes. But yes.
All right, we'll do a couple more of these. What comes more naturally to you, world building or breaking a heart?
Probably world building. Breaking a heart is hard. I think I was telling Steph this, like I don't like third act breakups. You have like your romance beats that you're supposed to hit. I just want it to be a continual rise in the romance. I don't need it to fall off. Like breaking people apart is not my favorite. World building, I can get lost in that. I have some stories that I've done where the outline has become almost like an encyclopedia for that world. And it's like 40 pages deep. It is not even a second world fantasy. It's a contemporary fantasy, and there's just that much stuff. So world building is definitely my favorite.
Mm. And I think the thing with dystopia, it's just there being just enough so people get it and understand it,
Mm-hmm.
but not overwhelming it's very tricky, actually. That is a fine balance. I feel like in fantasy, you can lean in a bit more with the level of detail, but with dystopian, it just needs to be enough. And then, but keep it moving, keep that plot going. Yeah. Okay, last one then. Without spoilers, if possible, what is your favorite scene or moment from I Feel Your Pain? Oh, okay, with spoilers. Both.
With
Is fine. Even
spoilers,
without. Yeah.
I think it's gonna be. I can't remember. I think it's like chapter 8. It's like when Cass and Nova are on like the fake date portion of their get together, and Cass is walking Nova over to like the glass rail to the bus stop, and then they have their first kiss, and it's just like they're teasing right before that they do. I like that one.
Yeah, the
I
banter.
I like their dynamic.
Yeah, the banter's good. She really does make him work.
Yes. Yeah, I like that.
I like that too. Okay, so for anyone coming to the book for the first time, could you just introduce us to Nova and Castor, the world of Alter Bay and the freedom system, and maybe just how things begin? Maybe our sort of catalyst, our inciting incident.
Let's see. You have Nova. She has this line where she's like, "I'm just a black girl from South Alta. That's Dominion's worst enemy." I love that line. But she is going to be your humble, down to earth girl, very family focused, 18, college, but also an artist, but also a part time waitress. She just has like so many things going on with her life. And then you have Castor, who I feel like the complete like opposite. Like he's just more carefree. He is an heir to $1 billion empire. So completely different priorities, on his way to becoming a pro surfer. And so you have them two kind of like colliding literally in a car crash, not car crash, when they first meet. And then the world that they're living in, Alta Bay, is very close to our own, like a little bit more in the future, a little bit more tech. But you've had this event that's happened in the past, the solar flare, that really changed the world and brought with it this disease that causes pain. And I think it's like in 0.5% of the population, like one out of every 200 people can get this disease. And it's just like excruciating pain. But luckily, there is the freedom system. And the freedom system allows for pain givers, like people with the pain, to sign up and to give away their pain to pain carriers. And these pain carriers are people who have a high tolerance to pain, according to the research. So it goes from there.
And I think that's a brilliant summary. And actually, on the bit about the freedom system and talking about pain is probably quite helpful for maybe what I want to ask you next. So I think you did brilliantly there.
Okay, great.
So, conversation that comes up so often, and maybe it's just in the echo chamber I'm in, is sort of talking about what books we get to write as Black people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and really often those are books about trauma, those are books about pain, those books about trauma and pain and set in the past, which is why I was sort of laughing to myself. You were like, I'm not going back to the past, right?
Yeah.
It's not the same question if you're asking sort of another person. And what we have with this story, with I Feel Your Pain, is actually like a whole narrative sort of talking about the idea of pain and this Black girl carrying pain.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel what you do really well and what this story does really well is that we're sort of breaking that structure. And it's almost a dialogue on this expectation about who gets to carry pain, my question to you is, how did you find navigating that whole space? Like what we want to say about Black women in particular and assumptions about carrying pain, but also what's gone before in publishing and expectations about what we write or don't write.
Mhm. That's a very good question. I think that I agree with you saying, like the stories that we get to write do seem to fall into particular categories. There are, of course, people who get to write about joy. It's just the majority, I think, when you come into specifically traditional publishing and the books that are pushed through like marketing are going to be the ones that have more of the pain or trauma, or basically trying to make like non-Black people be able to relate to the struggles of a Black person, I guess would be those. A lot of times those are the stories that get the heavy marketing. So that's always like an interesting space because it almost feels like that is the expectation, especially if you want that marketing budget, that's the expectation you go after. But with I Feel Your Pain, I feel like what we did here was like, yes, we touched on, there was like touching on like the trauma and the pain that Nova experiences, not just as like literal pain, but the systemic issues that are within their society that was touched on might be. But what I like that we did is that the story was about like breaking that down and exposing it more so that it wasn't just a story that was like, here, I'm on display like a museum exhibit. Instead of that, I'm going to take you through how things are and how things should be and what I should be allowed to have this life without pain, both physical and emotional. But it was a lot of, there were moments when I was crying while I was writing, a lot of emotions through it, but I was very happy to be able to write that story, just to have that outcome at the end. Because I'm thinking about some of the books that I've read that have the different pain and trauma inside of them. And while sometimes there is always going to be like a happy ending of some sort, it's a happy ending that might feel for the moment. But this one was more of a happy ending that was supposed to be changing the society. Like not just a happy moment for your main character, but we're going to make changes to the society and make everyone existing in this world see things for what they are, break down those barriers and stuff like that, and just expose the world for what it really is.
Yeah. I think, obviously this is a 2-book series. I'm trying to be really careful because I don't want to give anything away. But I think what's wonderful is you sort of have the love story of Castor and Nova. And then there's a sort of this bigger love story, I suppose, which is of the society and Alter Bay, where you talk about the community there and especially family. I think that family feels like an ode. It feels, it's so loving, like the way you speak about Daddy, you really feel it. And actually talking about Nova and her family and almost this idea of Black girl being soft and us getting to see her in all of her versions, how was that to write? And what was at the sort of front of your mind when you were bringing all of that texture to Nova?
Yeah, I think I was really happy to be able to write Nova and like getting her soft life. Like that was fun to me. I wanted more of it. It was something to where I was really happy to be able to write that type of arcs for Nova. And you kind of want your characters like they deserve the world. I felt like Nova deserved the world. She deserved to have the soft life. She deserved to have no pain, to just have her family. And she also deserved to have her family also have no pain, like her community not to have pain. And so being able to give her bits of a soft life was like really important to me. I want that for everyone in the community. Like I want that for my own kids. I want that for you and I. That's the goal, I think.
That's the goal. And sort of circling back slightly to my first question, there's something around, like I want the soft life for us in terms of, those books that we get to write as well. Have you ever felt any pressure to write certain types of books, or in your circles, do you feel like there is still this expectation about what genres we get to write in, what sandbox we get to play in, like what we get to imagine?
Yeah, I think that there's things that are just more palatable for the greater book community. I guess I would say it that way. I try to remind myself that publishing is very much a business. So they are looking to release stories that are going to have a wide audience, And yes, people get to publish, like, it's not always going to be a commercial story. There's tons of beautiful lyrical prose, just like more literary stories, not so commercial, different niche genres. So there's all that exists. I want to acknowledge that all that exists. And we have chances to write in all of that. But the greater pressure feels as though you get put in this box, like you don't necessarily get the privilege to jump into those other niche genres. People over there, they're special. Somehow they got over there, but that's not for you. First, you have to go through this gate over here. And that's how it feels. I'm not going to say that's how it is. This is how it feels as far as the responses back. Not just the responses you get back from readers, but just like the steps before that. So like the responses you get back from querying, like getting an agent, the responses you get back once you go on submission from editors. I'm not saying all agents and editors are this way or that this is the intent behind their words. But when you have a bunch of responses piling on top of each other that all sound the same, it does kind of like point you in a direction of feeling like, okay, I think that I need to stick to this box over here in order to be successful. It is my goal to not stick to that box with I Steal Your Pain. I feel like we are not in that box, in my opinion. I feel like we have come out of the box, and maybe that's another conversation I'll get into. My thoughts on that. But I feel like we are not in that box, and I'm glad that we're not. I do feel like there is a box that publishing tries to put people in. I don't think it's a horrible box. I think for some people, they enjoy writing those stories and they enjoy what they're putting out. I think just for me, as far as that's not the box that I want to be put in.
I'm just sort of nodding my head off here. I think there's something interesting about what's happening in that traditional publishing space and in that indie publishing space where even though being self-published or being independently published, like you have to do all the elements and it's really hard. But that freedom, I think, is such fertile ground. It's where we're seeing just some really interesting stuff because the gatekeepers aren't smushing people into these boxes. And, I'm not saying when it comes to the publishing industry, it's not like they're having secret meetings where they're like,
right.
Look, we're going to put Black writers in these boxes and this is what we're going to do. But it's just all of the individuals making small individual choices and their understanding about what works in the market. It's like, oh, this thing has worked before, so let's just do it again, because it is a business. But the thing that I say, if I ever and whenever I get a little platform to say it is, we are all part of the system, and those little choices that you think are inconsequential, actually they all add up to Black writers being put into certain spaces, not getting the same marketing spend and on and on and on and on. Like, that isn't accidental. It's the adding up of all of these tiny, tiny, small decisions that add up to it not being a fair or even playing field.
Right. And I think a lot of that comes from this lack of knowing or lack of caring. But it's more so the way someone markets to me and gets my attention is not going to be the same way someone might market to you and get your attention. And I think that sometimes with any industry, really, not just publishing, there will be a model that works and it gets a large enough group of people to where it's like, we're going to stick to this model because the lights are on with this model. We are making enough money. We are doing enough with this model. But that's not how it works because like no culture is a monolith. Black people are not a monolith, so like we write different stories and we're not going to read every single story by every single Black person. Like there will be ones that we don't like as well. It's about knowing how to market that story to find its audience and then just taking the time to actually do the work to figure that out. Because like a book can come across someone's desk and they're like, oh, I love this story, but I don't know how to market it. It's like just knowing, okay, you love the stories, you want to put the effort in to figure out how to attract the audience. You want to put the effort in to actually make this like a big deal. And I think that a lot of the success I'm seeing right now with the Black reading and Black book community has been a lot of like indie authors just finding their space because they're just like being authentic to themselves. And that is so inspiring to me just to see them finding their space. And on the other side, it's a little frustrating to see some traditionally published Black authors that have more visibility and not quite find the same type of success because the marketing engine behind them is not positioning them as well as they could.
Yeah, I've worked in publishing for 20 years now. And I think where I've just landed is we can't just have sort of cookie cutter campaigns, right?
Mhm.
Like it doesn't work. But that doesn't mean that we're the problem. Of course, Black readers aren't a monolith, just like white readers aren't. But there's a sort of this
Right.
understanding that you might need to try some different things and even get beyond the white gaze. I think that's where half of it falls down straight away.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's say I do find myself more and more looking towards some of the stuff that they're doing in indie publishing, just because I think that sort of entrepreneurial, scrappy spirit is unearthing certain selling strategies, even if it's selling direct or subscription boxes or some other ways, or brand partnerships. I just think the whole thing needs to just be broken open. Publishing system as it exists right now doesn't serve Black people from marginalized communities. Like it's not giving them the best shot. I think is where I'm landing.
Yeah. I think there are success stories. I just think that there should be more success stories within traditional publishing. And I think that that is not from the author at all. There's so many good books I've read that have gone under the radar, like traditionally published books. And I will sit and ask myself, like, this makes no sense why this person is not at the notoriety of this person. Especially when it comes sometimes to just like craft. Like there's some really, really hidden gems out there. What is it that we have to do for everyone to get their shine? Because everyone deserves their shine, and I know that they can get it.
Yeah, for sure. Let me ask you a question then about how, because some people might turn around and say, well, dystopian and romance, they don't really go together. Is that even a genre? Like, what is that, right? How did you find treading that line between dystopian and romance? And did you find yourself leaning more into one than the other, especially when thinking about tropes and things?
I think that the moment when you put like two genres together, like dystopian romance, I feel like in my mind it has to be 50-50. So that it becomes going back and making sure that I have just as many scenes with the dystopian feel as I do with the romantic romance feel. I'm trying to remember how I went about this. I feel like I might have added one or two like extra moments, I think, into this outline, if I'm remembering correctly. But it's just like having more moments of the romance develop so that I am giving the book, the story, equal amounts of like hope throughout while we're dealing with the dread of dystopia. So I think that it's like finding that 50-50 balance and figuring out how each of those story arcs are going to travel from beginning to end and just making sure they get the right amount of attention. Because I think the moment you go in more into one into the other, then it becomes, this is a romance with dystopian elements, or this is a dystopian with romantic elements. And I wanted to make sure that it felt like a dystopian romance from like beginning to end. So being able to put those two together. And I think that it should be a genre. Because the way that people treat some of like the 2010 dystopians, you would think that it was already like a thriving genre like, back in the day. So to me, it's an official drama. If romantasy can become a thing, then we can have. I think I've seen it like this dystopimance or something. Dystopia.
It's got it's got a branding problem. That's the thing because romantic, like you
You do
get,
say.
don't you? You get
Mhm.
it. We just there's nothing quite as like it makes sense in terms of what you'll be sort of fed creatively. You're like, yes, dystopian romance. You can see because the stakes are really high, and you can see how
Mhm.
that will be hella sexy. That's fine, but it's just there's not a really pithy phrase that puts them together that has that nice mouth feel like
Yeah,
romanticism. That's that's what's tricky, I think.
that's true.
Can I ask you a question on the side? So there's a lot of conversation around tropes, and some people love tropes and will really sort of lead into it and will actually, condense the book just down to its tropes. And other people really don't like that. Like, do you find tropes in the romance part of your writing helpful or not helpful?
I think that the more overarching tropes are helpful. It's good to know if it's going to be enemies to lovers. That's helpful to know. When it gets to the more specific things, I feel like sometimes it can feel like we're going up against the checklist. Like how many of these marketable phrases can we fit into this plot? So for me, it's just kind of like figuring out the story, like how it's naturally going to occur, and then going back and see like, did I hit any tropes by chance? Not trying to hit the tropes, but just seeing if they happened naturally.
Mm.
And I feel like with Nova and Kath, I think we kind of skimmed on the golden retriever black cat. It's like it's there. You can touch it. It's there. But it was like I did not set out. Like when we sat down and we talked about what story was going to be, I did not set out with that trope. It's just that's how the characters developed to be. And so that's kind of my preference is just let the story develop and then we can go back and figure out what those tropes are at the end.
I mean, he is so adorable. He's
He
so
is. He
sweet.
is.
Like all of that privilege that he's been brought up. Like he could have been a real douchebag.
He could have. And I think that was the greatest hurdle with him was making sure that the things I had him saying, he was not becoming a douchebag. I did not want that for him. So I want everyone to swoon. Everyone must swoon with every word that he says. No, but yes. That was the goal.
It's a goal. Oh no, he's adorable. I'm such a fan. I've always liked there's a nice boy though, I was do you like a sort of bad boy?
I think it depends on how I'm feeling at the time. I will
Yeah.
read I read more adult, when it comes to romance, I read more adult romances. And there's a pretty wide range of things. Like I like to read some where you have the sweet guy bring home to mom, but I also like the guy that you definitely don't bring home to mom. Both of them are quite equal for me.
Oh my goodness. Listen,
Um,
Angelica, I could go on and tell you about all the things that I've been reading and maybe shouldn't be reading. And talking to you about this world has just been so lovely. Can you please tell the fine folks listening where they can find you on socials?
oh, sure, yes. It is at A Monet Ellis, like the spelling. So it's AMONAIELLIS. My mom was really fancy with the way she spelled Monet, so that's that right there. But I am on Instagram, Threads. That's where you're gonna find me the most. I have accounts, I think, everywhere. But as far as like where I actually hang out, it's gonna be Instagram and Threads.
Amazing. And I have to say, I love your posts as well because you're really clever with graphics. I think it's so unfair that someone can write and also be good with pictures. Like, I just, it's not okay to be good at all the things, but honestly, your posts around I Feel Your Pain are just exquisite as well. So, I Feel Your Pain is out in the UK already. It's published by Penguin. Lovely front cover, which was illustrated by Otisanya. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. Really, really fabulous cover. We hope it will be in the US one day. We're going to make
Yes,
it happen one way or another.
yes, yes, yes.
Yes, we
Speaking of
will.
existence.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to Storymix Craft and Conversation. My guest today was A.M. Ellis, author of I Feel Your Pain, published by Penguin Random House on June 25th, 2026. You'll see links to our guest, the book, and everything we've mentioned in today's conversation in the show notes. And if you'd like to support Storymix and help us keep creating opportunities for writers and illustrators, you can buy us a coffee through Ko-Fi. You'll find the link in the show notes. You can discover more about Storymix and the books we create at storymix.co.uk, and come say hi on our socials at Storymix Studio. I'm Jasmine Richards. See you next time.